Just going to give it 1 minute and I'll get started in a second. It is Clemens led. I'm just starting off with my Hey Gen intro.
Happy Web3 Wednesday. This is Clem Bot, and today we're going to dive into the February 2024 AI Insights. If it's your first time joining, I've run these monthly AI Insights since May 2023 with the goal of upskilling Web3 contributors, companies, and DAOs with the latest trends and experiments with AI. This intro was completely generated by HeyGen AI off of my HeyGen avatar.
Okay. And now this is me. Why can't I see myself? That's okay. I'm sure I look okay. So this was generated with Hey Gen. I decided to make an avatar clone of myself, and it's super easy to do. It really is just 2 minutes. I did set up my DSLR and was able to record everything. But yeah, I can generate any video of myself. I did a project of 30 self-proclaimed titles that I put on my YouTube, but it doesn't really cost that much, and maybe I'll come back to it. And feel free to take a look at this platform. It has automatic combinations of languages. So if I wanted to, the AI doesn't want to give the camera back to me. Am I somewhere? I'm sure I'm somewhere. That's okay. And so let's get started with the session.
Happy Web3 Wednesday.
And this is also something that I shared to some people, but mischief.app is where you can do a facial overlay to existing GIF, which is pretty cool. GIF. Okay, let's get started. So I recorded a 4-hour course. It will be published internally to consensus people first, but they're basically 10 to 15-minute segments. And it combines a lot of the content that I've covered and is publicly available, but it's just packaged nicely. And I tried to focus on the impact to any type of innovation lead, somebody that wants to create their own AI team or applied AI working group. I give direct advice on how we did it within consensus, but also sharing some of the challenges that we had. So today I'm going to cover the standard AI intro. I'll probably cut it down to around 20 minutes and then go into AI insights from the past month and then go into the different GPTs that I've started using for my everyday tasks. For context, consensus has been working on with around AI. We have an AI team within the office of the CTO, and we have been doing so since around March of 2023, starting with hackathons, starting with thinking about our legal policies, how to make sure we have data privacy taken care of by really doing this in a decentralized way. I just started a Slack channel called Applied AI, and we started dropping different types of news and impacts to our products and what other people are doing in the space. And we also included it into our Cypherpunk hackathon. We had a whole section around AI, how to leverage the Azure OpenAI Playground at first, and then how to eventually get access to ChatGPT, GitHub Copilot, and then eventually building our own internal ChatGPT that we can use for any type of private data that we want. Eventually, we did an AI takeover sprint, which was really enjoyable. It was 10 weeks of pretty much giving people different prompts and different types of subjects related to prompting, image generation, writing, different types of things that people might leverage it for. And along the way, we were in parallel building out the proper processes so that if there were any type of applications that we wanted to review, again, for data privacy reasons, we would do so in a very consistent way. In terms of what's public facing, I think that onboarding for DAOs is going to be quite a interesting area. It is more or less community formation. It's more or less understanding and summarizing what we see in a very noisy space. And there's a lot of things happening and a lot of great things. So trying to filter that properly is also important. There's also upgrades to customer support. So different types of chatbots for documentation, unifying multiple pieces of documentation across multiple Git books. I think that's really important. We also started exploring how to create different types of snaps GPTs to help with the process and the user experience that changes when there is a new dev process coming with all of these new tools coming out. For those who have missed this session, all of these are recorded and they're on the Consensus YouTube channel as an unlisted playlist. So feel free, we will share all of these slides and you can access all the previous slides and material as well. So quick AI intro, what we have been building is effectively a foundational model. This is kind of the new thing from 2022, late 2022 onward, is thinking about large language models with generative AI. But supervised learning and AI and machine learning has been around for quite a long time. There has been a history of it evolving. There is more or less the labeling of things with supervised learning. That's kind of the AI that most people know, which is you take a superset of material of different types of patterns and you want the AI to basically guess the upcoming patterns. So if you have a lot of emails that are personal and you mark them as spam, then maybe it can guess what is spam in the future. If you have different types of ad information and you see which one's being clicked through, then maybe you can improve on the ads that match that particular area for online advertising. Maybe there's different types of A/B testing. So all of this type of supervised learning with data lakes and data processing, big data processing, little data processing has been around for a long time. And it includes layers of predictable pieces. What we have with prompt-based AI, generative AI type of work is that you are guessing the next series of words and the transform itself is getting very, very good. Basically, any type of interaction, it could be first text-based and then multimodal, as in you can share different images, you can share voice-to-voice type of conversations. And all of this is really getting pretty interesting because it's semantically understanding the English language and now multiple languages. And so what does that mean is it changes the way that we interact with technology. We are no longer, or maybe we can still be, but the things that we query, we are trying to find the best list, for example. And maybe we're still using apps and creating apps and kind of clicking on buttons, but there could be a different type of interface that's closer to a linguistic-based interface. And I'll talk a little bit about that based on some of the different trends that I've seen. So I made this prediction back in April. I still think it's true. The current steps that have been taken for individuals through the creator economy is work arbitrage. Basically, those who don't use the tool or learn to use the tool will fall behind. And the pricing that you have for most types of jobs are a little bit off. Some people are augmenting themselves with AI properly. Others are directly using it and just using a pass-through service. But there's people that are using Fiverr and other types of services and bounties and fulfilling them by leveraging the tools that help with kind of end-to-end processing. And then I think that on a company level, the AI modules and the different types of enterprise projects that are being created are also helping companies move forward, build their products faster, onboard employees faster, as well as have a better understanding of their product roadmap better. And I think what this leads to is deflationary pressure, meaning that when you have kind of more technology replacing people and headcount, then you may need less money to start your particular project. Maybe a single person can run a company that becomes a SaaS company or builds products for SaaS companies. And so therefore the VC money and the checks that they're writing are going to be more selective, but also maybe a little bit smaller or reallocated to infrastructure. So all of these things happen, and there was within Google a presentation around moats, how there's no more moats in this space because as you extrapolate AI moving forward, you can have this AI generated software as a service kind of built out, right? And I think where it leads to are personal AI clones or company-based AI clones. And the use case that I like to think about is mergers and acquisitions. If you do an M&A, for example, if I had Bitcoin on my server and somebody acquires my company and they own all the hardware, then they will acquire the Bitcoin value inside of the servers, which could be more than the company itself than what was built. If you do an M&A with that company and they have an AI agent that has learned it as a full historian of some sort with all of its products, and you're able to query it much easier and learn from it as an expert, then that could also be a value proposition for your company. So forming some type of internalized enterprise-based AI clone that can talk to other AI agents in the future seems to be where we're headed towards. And we could see that use cases are everywhere. I remember from the Uber for X phase where people were just leveraging your GPS, leveraging kind of this marketplace with payments. So effectively, if you wanted to go from one place to another and you wanted to link up to a full bid-ask marketplace of who's going to do that driving for you, the technology takes care of most of the mundane portions, which is kind of the matchmaking plus the gamification of all of it. And I think that for ChatGPT for X is not just the training of AI agents or the usage of them, but really the building out of specialized ones. So we're going to talk about GPTs and the GPT store that was launched a month ago. And so I mentioned earlier, the trend is really thinking about querying versus prompting. And this is an example for image creation. When you're using Google, you are typing in a query that gives you a set of results. And so if you're using Midjourney, for example, you're typing in a prompt, quote unquote prompt that says, I will generate 4 images for you, and you can choose and edit and then finalize the image, maybe re-roll or kind of build out different seeds for making those images. But effectively, you are writing the query yourself. You're writing the search that you're looking for. And I think that what we've added in the user experience, this linguistics user experience, is a conversational based prompt. So what that means is that you are not necessarily writing a particular series of words or keywords or negative phrases for the generation of your image or even your conversation, but you can have it under an intention. So maybe I'm writing a blog post and we are having a conversation about writing that blog post, but at the end I need to have the metadata for that blog post, or I need to create images off of it. And the context window is large enough that the large language model can write something with you along the whole journey, instead of you compartmentalizing and saying, well, I just want to get this image, so I'm going to use a specific tool to make that particular image. And so if you look at what the most common bot marketing talking points are, it's either you deploy in public, which could be a separate GPT trained agent altogether. You don't want to connect it to your private data. You don't want it to share any secret phrases or be able to launch any APIs for even buying a car, for example. I believe somebody bought a car for $1 because they were able to just through prompting talk their way into purchasing the car for $1. And there could be customer support bots. It could be reducing general customer support types of interactions. And you can also build your own ChatGPT in the GPT store. And I think internally, that's the work that we've been more or less focusing on, which is how do you level up your team? How do you train your Copilot agent on the product itself? And how do you make sure that all of that is maintained within your data privacy rules? What we've seen in the public space is retail-facing features, more or less onboarding chat with your docs. That's pretty basic. We've seen that launch from April of last year, kind of right away. People were building out I believe Binance has a sensei that does this. Crypto.com has an agent that they've created that helps with that experience and continues to learn. What I've been looking at is what is the search engine optimization version when advertising is no longer a part of it. GPTs have this black box. You're not really sure how they came to particular answers, if they were copying something one to one or had access behind firewalls for any type of articles. So there's a lot of contention about what is originality, and when it's learning something, is it using it for inspiration or is it regurgitating and guessing accurately enough to actually have the full article. There was a New York Times, I believe last month, I wrote about this and presented on the New York Times lawsuit around this. For internal usage, again, I think there is going to be content creation velocity is going to peak, and most of the data that we see today is probably inspired by or will be created by AI at some point, right? And hopefully that enables us to be more creative, because we're not just writing the simple things, but letting them enable us for the next steps moving forward. And so if you think about generative AI, what we see today is large language models that are independently trained. There's a lot of them. There's close to 500,000 of them in open source within Hugging Face, for example. These are just the big ones. Bard is now using Gemini and the Gemini Pro. And then what it's usually trained on is public data. So for example, GPT-4, that public data was trained from April 2023. And every single time you talk to it, it's a new thread, right? You're just talking to a new thread version of that GPT-4 that's trained with it. And then if you have custom instructions, you're basically preceding that conversation. And what people are looking for is live public data. So Grok, which is made by X/Twitter, that has live public data, training data that it learns every day. I believe Bard actually just got an upgrade with live public data as well, and new extensions. I'll have a slide on that. And what people want to do for this kind of private enterprise-based chat GPT AI agent inside is to train it on your private-based data, as well as then look at live private-based data, so that there's preferences per employee, so that multiple people inside of a company can train the same AI agent, maybe use that through Slack or through Discord or through other means instead of just pure APIs. But that's what we're trying to get towards, is maybe there's APIs and plugins that we have internally. Maybe there's better ways for DevOps to be managed by AI. Who knows? But there's other things that can be built when you get towards this live private data and live public data. And what we get to is this personalized coordinating AI agent. It's my thinking around the new linguistics API is basically using natural language as a way to communicate between companies rather than purely APIs. Your AI agent could likely understand how to write that API call and do the call on your behalf. Maybe it works with other AI agents, and that there's a theory called AI agent swarms. Basically, each AI agent can have a special purpose. You can put them into a simulation and they can work together. I was going to show this next week or next month, but effectively there is a AutoGen studio that uses the AutoGen protocol. Effectively, all these AI agents inside of your simulation can talk to each other and share information. And if you wanted to do a research project, then you can actually have an AutoGen version of 5 or 6 different agents working together, building something together. So what have we seen in the past year? A lot of growth and development for sure. This is the accelerated version of things happening with technology. There's a hype cycle along with it, but I think that the retail use case is super fascinating. I love being a retail user. In the past, it was just building the machine learning, writing the algorithms, and now it's really being an end user of all of it is quite rewarding. The GPT store launched a month ago, and I like to compare it to self-hosting of websites versus blogging platforms. So when you create your blog, you can, set it up build out your Vercel app or something. Maybe it's a WordPress operating system. And eventually people came up with these simplified platforms that allow you to maintain followers. And maybe it's just a bunch of email addresses, but effectively also turn on paid subscriptions. So if you're in Medium, their innovation was a lot of migration of older blogs over to theirs. And then they would SEO optimize each of your sites. And then they will also handle any type of CDN, any type of website caching that you would need to make it more efficient. And so what you have with ChatGPT that people were building fine-tuned different types of GPTs, different types of AI agents. Now you have a place that can be hosting for all of it. So OpenAI would host the customized GPT on your behalf. And then if you wanted to, you can also move that to your own website because you've trained it and it is usable. So there's auto hosting, auto scaling, a lot of migration that could happen. And I think this is important. I think it's pretty significant because, the first iteration of this was plugins, meaning you were able to build your own series of plugins and that connects to your APIs. And then you can basically use the interface of chatting as a way to call your APIs and maybe, collect a bunch of data, summarize that data, and then use your own APIs to build a separate page that allows you to pull all of the images for a children's book, for example. And what we have today is a GPT store that eventually will have not just discovery, but payments, maybe different types of listing and categories. Maybe there's deployment mechanisms. There's definitely some auto scaling available. And maybe the people that build out their GPTs can be paid for its usage. They could also help with building out different types of projects. So within the Web3 space, maybe this is like snaps, right? Each snap within the Snap store is doing some type of augmentation, and then you can kind of grow from there. So there's definitely a marketplace, and I believe it should be decentralized. It isn't right now, but eventually maybe there are decentralized versions of it. And the things that haven't been built, this was a much bigger box, which is, I think, the interaction to a new browser would be super interesting. And I just looked at the Arc browser. Now, there was a really good video that came out 5 days ago on the usage of the Arc browser. So I'm not sponsored by anybody. So feel free to look at the Arc browser and what it does. And this is also an image of the Rabbit R1 that was announced at CES. What I still think is missing is a naming service, and maybe that's what's decentralized, is a way for me to resolve my particular GPT and maybe be able to call that GPT easily. So the different solution techniques, and I like the summary, which is if you wanted to more effectively train your customized GPT or your customized large language model, you start off with the lowest, which is just in context, right? So your context window is 200,000 or 250,000 parameters, and then you can kind of grow from there. But you can do that by doing contextual prompting with custom instructions saying you are this particular expert, and then you should act this way, respond in this way. Then you have retrieval augmented generation, or RAG. And this is where you use the embeddings by the actual learning of the text that you're sharing with it. So a knowledge base that's optimized and is retrieved and learned live. And then when you want to grow it even more, you can do fine tuning. So fine tuning is available in GPT 3.5 Turbo, I believe, and that would optimize your cost to run. So it would learn all the material, but it's already fine tuned. It's not just doing a live retrieval. And eventually, much more for academic research, people are training more models. Again, I mentioned there's 450,000 or so large models that are available on Hugging Face and are open source. So I follow tech. I just love Apple Vision Pro memes, and this is a gift for all of us to see how we interact with it. I personally love augmented reality and kind of XR, this kind of experiential reality within the metaverse space. I have a Quest 3, I've had a Quest 2, and I kind of really like the Oculus, and I really like how it's changed the way I work out, changed the way I interface. And I think that the next logical step is to think about not just the audio version of this and making an audio-based operating system, but you have all of these inputs and outputs from large language models, right? You can create an operating system that's all voice-based, that doesn't have apps anymore, that has different multiple interfaces, again, off of your intention rather than the context of inside of an application. And there's also a lot of innovation happening just for better productivity. So there's a lot of great demos of the Apple Vision Pro that I've looked at where it looks at your eye movements, it looks at how you can type faster, how you can upload it. Maybe there's cross-account interfaces. So if I wanted to drag and drop an image from one place over to a chat from another, I mean, all of those are kind of seamlessly done. And then I also looked at Neuralink, which announced that they did a successful installation into real human. So all of that is all input at the moment. Is how do I input data and hopefully eventually be faster at inputting data into a computer than regular. But later on, maybe the brain would also interpret the data. So you get towards the matrix, we're able to learn different actions through the brain. At the moment, it's just input mechanism, which is whatever I'm thinking can be processed by a computer. That computer can then show, a page and read the memes about the Apple Vision Pro. So I think all of these are really, really fascinating. And these new interfaces are going to include AI in some way, shape, or form. I think the characters that are created with AI will eventually be launched within the metaverse. And maybe you would play a metaverse game with your AI companion, or you launch your metaverse AI and there's already a character waiting there for you that's just kind of walking around. Maybe it's like a Tamagotchi that you can hang out with and have to feed. I mean, a lot of things can happen within the metaverse. So I imagine that's kind of the next step, is to implement. Meta has a bunch of open source projects like their Llama project for a large language model. So I'm sure a lightweight version of that can exist inside of your version. Black Sun compatible ENS. There was also a great post from Vitalik for those who haven't read it. There's a summary that I wrote here by reading it and not using AI, but effectively it has this really nice Venn diagram thinking about where blockchain and AI has synergies. Maybe it's related to data ownership, transparency, different types of cost cutting, different types of competition, innovation, inclusivity, so full access, as well as some transparency of the calls that are being made. And the way that Vitalik writes this, and he's always a great writer, is to separate it out as where AI plays. So AI is a player in the game. Therefore, you have basically bots playing games. They have their own incentives. Maybe they create prediction markets. Maybe they are your users that give you feedback, right? They can be an interface to the game. Maybe it's better educational, better behavioral oversight for reviewing certain activities. Maybe they are the rules of the game, so they become judges in the game. And maybe they are the objective of the game. So you are building the AI itself that has better incentives, and it's kind of a meta version of it. So instead of building a Sims life, you're kind of building the Sim creator that will then create the Sims life. So okay, so what have I seen? These are the AI trends that I've summarized, and I always highlight the ones that I think are most relevant for the month. And just to kind of quickly cover, there are closed source types of large language models, and now we're seeing a huge growth of open source ones that are using fewer parameters, but also getting better and better and closer to the performance of GPT-4 and kind of whatever GPT-5 will be when it comes out. There's definitely a lot of lawsuits and regulation, and this month there was the Biden phone call made to people in New Hampshire saying that please don't vote and wait until voting for the end of the year. Anyway, there's definitely media impact. There's impact with gaming. There's image security impact. There's multimodal, more enterprise-based features. I think terms of service and new integrations will definitely happen. And bigger companies are just getting bigger and bigger. The Magnificent Seven that pretty much runs the market are all involved in AI and will likely have integrations directly with their existing services. So here's a summary of those big players. You have Google that has already launched quite a bit on their Gemini Pro all the way down to Gemini Nano, which now runs locally on your Pixel 8 if you have one, Pixel 8 Pro, whatever it is. And that means that it can learn certain things, understand. It's only a matter of time when Assistant Plus Plus comes out, right? So the Google Assistant powered by Bard, or running Gemini Pro, could exist without any type of API calls to the internet, right? So it understands language without actually being packaged with an API call. And then I see Microsoft OpenAI still going strong. Microsoft Copilot came out, and basically all features of ChatGPT from OpenAI are available through Microsoft. So if you haven't checked out the Copilot, it is much better. Bing is still not great, but Copilot as an app is actually pretty useful. It does overlays with images. It kind of does some minor enhancements for the user. In AWS, the Amazon Q came out a few months ago, and it does much more integrations with existing systems. So if you haven't checked that out, Amazon Q is really impressive. It's actually better, in my opinion, than GitHub Copilot for creating the services and understanding what services are available within AWS. And Google just announced, Apple just announced a bunch of things. I think that the interfaces that are being used in the Vision OS as well as the iOS will come out as well. And Meta, again, has been going crazy with open source. So their Llama models are getting released, and a lot more chatbots that are being available in WhatsApp and other areas. They're a big contributor to Hugging Face, and the Meta Research AI group is quite impressive. They've built a lot of things. In terms of CES from earlier this January, there were a lot of AI-powered promises. So every vendor claimed to have an AI-powered solution, and we're actually seeing it's not just experimentation like you would have a supercar that looks really nice, but there's only two of them that have ever been made. This is more of how do I scale and implement it? So really big companies rolling out Gen AI searching with Walmart, different types of AR interfaces with beauty companies. You have different payment providers adding on AI to their services, and also the Rabbit R1, which I bought and hopefully will come in by March or April so I can see what it's all about. So yeah, the innovation here is that the operating system authenticates through your services, through your login. And instead of having apps on a screen, everything is voice-based. So effectively, if I wanted to, if it already has connection to all of my Google services, then it would know from my Google Calendar that something is coming up. I might need to drive there. So it'll use Google Maps right away and all these other things. Oh, there was a hand raised. Are we pursuing specific retail AI powered products? Learn how to trade in crypto. I can answer this towards the end. Okay, a few more insights. I didn't mention this in December, but this was a big deal to me. There were, a lot of robotics integrations, and really, really impressive, just showcasing spatial understanding as well as, yes, I did get Perplexity AI bonus for a year, but it's pretty good. I mean, I like it. It does research quite nicely. It has a lot of references. I can't wait for your insights review of the rabbit. Yes, happy to do so. Also, I know some people have the Humane pin. I also purchased basically anything that comes out that's AI based. Might as well try it out. And then you kind of just lock it away in case it gets sentient and listens to everything that you do. The other thing to think about is multilingual support. So 11 Labs continues to grow. It's really incredible because all of it is pretty much free. I mean, you can obviously do this for audiobooks, but they created a new interface for dubbing. So if you wanted to redub a splash video that you've done in another language, then you can pretty much enter in, type it in, edit the text. You enter in the original video. It kind of does everything seamlessly for you. It gives you the transcript of what you said. It gives you the translation, and then it redubs the audio with the new translation. Google also launched Lumiere, which is their version of text to video, and they've launched that available on Bard right now. So there's links all over the place. You can feel free to read the source of it. But yeah, it's really, really impressive. They are able to now have that available in Bard. So I was just testing with it for ETH Denver, and it does, renderings from, I'm guessing, their Google Images search, and you can refine as you would within ChatGPT. You can have it say particular text, and you can iterate on it. I wanted to see if they would make something with ETH and Denver together, and then eventually came up with this, which I thought was pretty interesting, kind of a cool symbol, combining both of them, as well as this one, which I think is pretty cool. But yeah, you can add on, and then there's kind of like fails. I don't know what this is. Anyway, so there's a lot of tools out there, and feel free to play around with them. Lumiere, again, is not fully released, but they have the text to image released within Bard, and I think they will eventually include a text to video, and imagine all of this within YouTube and more YouTube Studio creation things for a faster, economy of scale. Something also came out from TikTok, which is ByteDance is the owner of TikTok. They had this GitHub paper around Magic Video V2, which is also text to video. So I mentioned this last month is in terms of predictions for 2024. Basically, all video is fake. I mean, people will be creating images to video or text to video very, very soon, and it will happen much faster than we think it will. Another thing that I mentioned before is that fake Biden call. So there's a source of what happened. Effectively, I heard it. It didn't really sound, and also I also generated this image on Midjourney. But the concern here is that deceptive actors through audio can be like, oh, well, I have a bad connection, and then I'm listening to something, and it could be from a loved one, it could be scam based, and usually, image based or video generation, you get a lot more data, and you can actually visually see their eyes are a little bit off, or something of that sort, or it looks too clean, or something of that. But the audio wasn't actually that convincing in my mind. There were weird phrases that were used that were kind of immediately out of the ordinary. To counteract that, this is fully open source as well. As I mentioned, the Meta AI research agency that they have internally has done quite a bit. There's AutoSeal, which is a watermark that will be an opt-in for any type of deepfake audio that's being created. So the opt-in approach is fine, but again, like, people just have to opt in to leverage this code base, right? But some people cannot, and it's the same with open source. You can create a lot of, closed source restrictions and guardrails, but if you open source something and you have it completely unrestricted, you can create porn, or you can create, cursing and very angry types of fine-tuned models if you wanted to. And all of these are open source, and again, they're getting smaller and smaller, so you can kind of create your own customized agents quite quickly. And I mentioned this before, Bard has real-time data now. I just learned this today, which I started playing around with, and you can ask it for news, and it'll give you the latest news. And I think afterwards, it'll just start to learn your preferences. So if you have a preference for, Google News RSS feed that you have followed, then it'll just you can ask it, hey, what happened today? And can you share my news? And it'll just give you a bunch of links, or it'll read it out to you in some way, shape, or form. Alibaba came out with Qwen 1.5, which is fully open source, and they have their paper and their posts available. It's pretty impressive as well. It actually almost matches GPT-4 Turbo. But again, all of these open source models are getting quite scary and quite good in terms of all of their benchmarks. And I showed this last month, but I think it's still extremely relevant, is the open source versus private models. Open source is catching up quite quickly. And yeah, there will be other types of growth in this space. And Skynet will likely be open source. So that's something to think about. If you wanted to run this, and again, not sponsored by anything, but I found that Jan.ai is pretty good at running locally downloaded large language models. And again, there's 450,000 Hugging Face models out there that you can download and run locally. And yeah, they are not that large to download, and this is a full node that's running offline, right? So they are not, it's a local model, it's fully open source, you can review it, and it's available to use. And if you're wondering, what are these large language models and what's a leaderboard look like, the LM-SIS is available. There's something called a chatbot arena leaderboard. And it's really cool how they do it. They create an ELO system, which is for those who play chess or any type of one-on-one game. It's basically ranking, and they kind of put these bots against each other, or the large language models against each other. And there is an arena ELO based on how they do in terms of different voting mechanisms, different types of usage. So Gemini Pro is getting up there, but effectively new previews that are coming out are also getting pretty impressive. And these are the ELO numbers based on them kind of going against each other. Cool. So last section here is about GPTs. Before I go into it, there is, I host Web3 other series. So with startups, I talk to the different startups and VCs that are available, and I discuss different patterns. And so this one I think is relevant because when people are building new applications, they have choices of how to distribute their software, distribute their applications. And so in this one, these next 3 slides cover different software deployment options and where you focus your coding. And new ones that come out, like Vision OS that just came out, you can choose to spend your time innovating in these spaces. So in the beginning, Mac desktop apps, you are writing different software, right? Your MSI software to install in your PC. And the reason you would do that is because you have RAM and GPU processing power, which is mostly for media editing. And so that is your software distribution. Maybe the old way was actually selling them in retail stores, and then eventually became downloading them. And now there's just like rentals and streaming and subscriptions in order to download as many as you want. Then within the web space, you have your scalable deployment of your web apps through Vercel or whatnot, through to multiple cloud services or your cloud service of choice. You don't have to host your own, bare metal web servers anymore, but eventually you can move to multiple versions of your package that's scaled by your cloud service. And that becomes your website. It could become your app.website.com if you have the hosting somewhere else. And you can also choose to build a Chromium extension as well. So if you're building Brave, for example, the Brave browser, they use Chromium, which is open source, and then they just layer on their different services on top of that. And then that could be desktop first access. And then eventually you might, build out your mobile app as your main version. It could be Android or iOS using the same APIs. You may do this because that has direct access to your location data, to thumbprint, to cameras, to microphones, and it might be a better user experience instead of just having the rendering of your website on a browser, for example. And then lastly, there's kind of these enterprise marketplaces. If you build for Confluence or Jira or Atlassian, you may be able to sell different applications directly into those marketplaces. You may be building for gaming applications, so using Unity or Unreal or distributing via Steam. Like, these are all niche markets, but depending on what you're building and what your purpose is, I think it's important to think about these software deployment options. And so within the Web3, I think there's a similar mapping. You have cloud services. Instead of regular infrastructure, there might be infrastructure gateways. So infrastructure as a service, like blockchain as a service, like Infura. There are multiple blockchain networks that are out there that you can deploy to. And then there's different manifestations of this. You can have chat apps for conversing with other communities, Discord communities, Slack communities. You can build like MetaMask, a wallet interface that connects to your wallet directly locally. If you're participating in validating as a solo staker, you can use your computer for mining power, for processing power. And you can kind of think through, maybe there's web widgets that you're creating after you connect your wallet, maybe new wallet interfaces with embedded browsers instead of your mobile app. Again, all these are kind of well established, but depending on what you're building, you can determine where you focus your engineering power. And so I wanted to bring that up because there's a lot of different AI deployment options that have been explored. So again, there's cloud services that are hosting trained large language models. And then if you're building a mobile app, then there is a ChatGPT as well as a Microsoft Pilot, Copilot one. But all of these are either mobile apps or messaging apps directly, and you can converse with your AI agent. You can use your microphone, directly talk to it. You can also build out your own SaaS products, your own chat interfaces, again, like embed different types of services directly into your system. And you can also create Chrome extensions. So I have this summary Chrome extension here. It's a ChatGPT summary that uses my GPT-4 account. And if I click it, it will summarize my presentation for me, or at least this page. And this is kind of generating off of the image that it has of the particular page. And you can do that anywhere. There's also something, again, I'm not hosted by or kind of sponsored by these people, but ChatSonic is another one that I've used. It helps you write and it has full overlays onto Google search results or other types of systems. And then you can think about, well, how do I make it more customized and how do I deploy it? So I believe Roblox just launched that their translation services are completely directly in their chat now. The extension is called ChatGPT Summary extension. Okay, so the iteration that we see today is effectively web widgets that are hosted kind of like blogging platforms with a lot of blogs. They will be referenceable and you'll be able to chat with them, and they're specialized, right? It's not just one, search engine to rule them all. It is a specifically trained knowledge base and something that can help you with very specific tasks. And maybe you would pay for a package that's hosted by, my company, or maybe Consensus writes a bunch of GPTs and how it gets used, and then publishes that out for other people. Again, you can build and deploy your custom GPT to the GPT store, and that could be Consensus hosted, meaning, we train it, we host it internally, and then we launch it on our docs. Or it could be OpenAI hosted, meaning, it's trained on OpenAI infrastructure, and then you can access it through that API call. So there are a lot of GPTs that are out there and are actually quite useful. You have to be a ChatGPT Plus subscriber in order to use them. Here are a few examples that I found, and there's links to them. I have single pages for all of them. The other thing to think about is this is all also available in open source, because Hugging Face is just a beast and kind of launches everything pretty much a month later. So there's assistants that are available. If you wanted to create your own assistant, you can do so. You can do so not with the GPT-4 model, but with the Mixtral or other types of large language models that are out there. And you can upload and add custom instructions and have system prompts, very similar to what you would have in ChatGPT. Although it's not the same. I've tried out a few different things, and it seems like there's some optimization that's done with the GPT builder, or at least it makes sure that you don't get the same errors. It's not the same as just dropping in your prompt in the first few words and then having that available. If you wanted to do this with a consensus-based AI chatbot, and we've had a lot of thoughts about this, and maybe I have to remove the customer success link, but effectively the first thing we thought about is policy and purpose. Make sure information is fully public. Maybe the form of filling out and talking to a particular ChatGPT type of agent may have PII data, so you have to do a lot of that work and convince your legal team that that's probably not going to happen. Whatever AI data that's PII data that's saved is not actually long-term remembered, only within a particular chat thread. And then you also think about your knowledge base, so the things that you can embed, lots of docs, internals, SIPs, so snap improvement proposals, repos, examples, blog posts, videos that have been done. And then there's the distribution mechanism, which I mentioned is probably best for it to be a website. Maybe it's internal only where your customer success team gets access to it. Maybe it's a GPT agent that's hosted by Consensus connected to the DNS, which could be a longer process. And then testing, I think, is underrated. It's not as important. As I think it's extremely important, but it's underrated as in people have not been putting the emphasis on training and making sure that the GPT acts the way that you want it to do. And again, the GPT is a language model, semantically understanding language, and can make up a bunch of things, but also can learn random things, throw things together, and then you don't really know how it concluded to the things that it got to. And then launching, right? So go-to-market planning is the same for any type of product feature. You can think about what that go-to-market looks like and how it changes within this new non-advertising based world. Maybe your GPT is sponsored by a particular place, so it has advertising, and your advertising partners are trained and preferred. So who knows? There's a lot of things that can be done there. In terms of usage, the 10-80-10 rule, this is usually for your team and how you delegate as a manager, or kind of thinking about the bigger picture. I think it works really well with AI agents as well, and how people use AI, meaning you start strong with your own ideas, maybe brainstorming with AI, but when you delegate and empower others to build it, you're basically using your AI agents. And then at the end, you want to be able to finesse and finish it properly before you complete the whole project. So this 10-80-10 rule is just the best way in my mind of leveraging these tools properly. Have you guys explored adding internal docs as a data source for Consensus GPT? Yes, we have. And we can do so right now with kind of custom dropping everything into a knowledge base and then embedding it with RAG. But yes, it is publicly trained data is available. So some examples of the different GPTs that I've used that I think are useful. There's a video summarizer. If you don't want to watch YouTube videos anymore, you don't have to. You can generate summaries for them. I generated a summary for the Jan 2024 AI Insights, and then I asked it questions on top of that. And I've probably tested out a bunch of these here in the past few days as well. And you can also do an FAQ generator. And from last month, I believe I showed how to actually build these GPTs. Feel free to watch last month's session, but effectively you are giving it instructions and you can write out. I even created a prompt perfecter of prompts. So if you wanted to actually make your own GPT prompt perfecter, you can use this to build out the prompt. So I want to write a GPT that writes the metadata for a video, then you can create a refined prompt that you can drop into it, which is kind of fun. There are AI-based GPTs that learn textbooks around AI and try this out. You can ask any type of complexities. It knows kind of common and more recent papers that are being published. There's a diagrams.show-me type of GPT where it can draw out sequence diagrams. I asked it to draw a diagram related to the features that were launched, and it did so. And then Scholar GPT, you can have it find the latest research paper, and they have 9 different levels of critical inquiry types. And so I believe I actually just mentioned this somewhere. There's also a MetaMask coach one, which somebody created and shared with us. These are the methods, critical reading methods. Yeah, this is the one. So this was a Scholar GPT, and it's able to summarize in question, have critical inquiry, and then I can follow up by saying, well, can you summarize with critical inquiry and ask questions related to how things work? And if you are trying to create test questions for reading a white paper, for example, you can have a GPT do this on your behalf. There's also a newsletter GPT, and this was built by Wes Frank, who I watched a lot of his videos. Is very practical, and he showcased how there was RAG training on a bunch of newsletters, but also format training with Morning Brew and their newsletters. So you can share with it a bunch of different articles, and it can summarize for you that you can just drop into your article creation for your newsletter. And then there's fun ones. Yeah, I was sharing sharing my cartoonize myself and different types of Simpsonize myself and things like that. There's also a coloring book hero where it doesn't do copyrighted photos, but it'll say like, oh, well, I'll choose something that's inspired by classic video games. So that's their version of Mario. Uh, and so what's available now is if you have this ChatGPT function and GPT Plus, you can also do something called ChatGPT mentions. So this is kind of like multi-threading. If I wanted to create a video of something, I had a demo here that I spun up. Yeah, it was over here. So I started off with saying, can you describe the latest applications with account abstraction? And then I had that conversation. And again, the intention here was to learn about account abstraction. But then I added on here an at mention to a GPT. And if you pin a GPT or if you've used it in the past, then you can kind of click it. And so you can convert videos, convert things, but you can use this video maker by InVideo. And effectively, they made a video for me which is available here because I had loaded it. And you can edit the video. What it did in an automated way was to take a bunch of AI generated photos, maybe stock photos. It created a script for it to use. Oh no. And then it allowed you to edit it live. So this is all created by InVideo. Again, not sponsored, just kind of playing around with their different tools. And yeah, you could have like a YouTube clip available. I believe the session timed out. But you can trust me on that. it did call this particular. Okay, I'll pull it up and show it in the next time. So just a few more slides. You can also do a live conversation with the GPT with the app itself. So if you have your app installed, you can use a conversation mode. And I tried this out for transcription services. I had a friend who, spoke Portuguese and didn't speak English very well. So we kind of made this prompt and we just said, can you help me be a transcription service? If you hear Spanish or if you hear Portuguese, then can you directly say the English translation? If you hear English, then say the Spanish or kind of Portuguese translation. And it actually works quite well. So if you have the interface, try it out. And yeah, I think that is kind of a nice place to stop. There's a lot of GPTs out there. And I think in the next one, I'm going to share the autogen as well as the creation of swarms and other types of optimizations that you can do and build out. Let me answer some of the questions that are available. Yeah, so work stuff is not recommended. You have to check with your own internal policy, but public sources are public, so they're available. Or if you're even building these, they're available. GPTs have an open source version that is available, but we have not launched it inside of our consensus GPT yet. But we will eventually. We are building towards that. And then GPTs that help people understand what tools exist to get them into crypto, generate wealth. I think lowering the barrier of entry to crypto is extremely important. I think it's hard because there's again that financial advice is kind of you can train on different types of data, some sentiment analysis, and it's interesting because there's liability reasons for this as well. Like, what if I did something that this chatbot told me to do? Like, I don't know. It seems like the influence for it could be very explicit. There's already talks about, I guess, the latest talks within Facebook and other social media companies influencing children and the way that they use social media, kind of degradation to mental health and causing suicides and other types of issues, or recommending things that are not supposed to be recommended. Imagine that kind of times 10 with a chatbot that knows everything about you and is connected to all your services. Yeah. Budget-friendly solution for image generation. I just mentioned that Bard does image generation for free. And if you use Bing, not that you should, but if you use Bing, you can use this images create if you would like through Bing. And you can also do stable diffusion, which is free. So if you wanted to do, I believe I still have SDXL stable diffusion. I shared this with the group earlier. I think it might have been, yeah, Hugging Face is everything open source. So you can pretty much use their services, and people have built their own version of it. You can, there is an SDXL Turbo with a link to a place. Oh, Trash Bandit. But yeah, you can host these all locally and unlock them. You don't have to follow the not safe for work stuff as well. Any other questions? Happy to. Okay, so we will upload this to YouTube and I will share the slides. I'm going to make them into a PDF and you should be able to view them. And internally, watch out for the upcoming Cornerstone because I will have the 4-hour course. Acoustic campfire story time. Yes, I can make my HeyGen model, play the guitar. Got a few guitars in the back. Ukuleles. Okay, thanks for your time, everyone.